I never thought I'd say this out loud. Not to anyone. Not even to myself. But I can't keep it inside anymore. For years, I convinced myself it wasn't wrong, that it was different for us. That love isn't always black and white. But now, looking back, I see it for what it was. And the weight of it is crushing me. I was just a kid when he came into my life. My mom adored him. I trusted him. And somewhere along the way, that trust turned into something it never should have. I'm 18 now, and I see the truth. But knowing it and accepting it are two different things. And for the first time, I'm ready to tell the world what really happened. I grew up in a quiet house. But not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that pressed against your skin, heavy and suffocating, the kind that made you feel small even when no one was looking at you. My mother and I lived in a space filled with unspoken words, with conversations that never went beyond what was necessary. She loved me, I never doubted that, but she loved in a way that felt distant, like she was always just out of reach. She worked long hours, coming home exhausted, barely looking at me as she moved through the house. I would watch her from the doorway of her bedroom as she sat at the edge of the bed, rubbing her temples, lost in thoughts she never shared with me. I learned over time not to interrupt. She had a sadness in her, a tiredness that settled in her bones, and no matter how much I wanted to be the one she turned to, she never did. So I kept to myself. I spent hours alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the television through the walls. At school, I floated through the hallways, always on the edges of things. I had friends, but no one who really saw me. No one who noticed the way I sat quietly at lunch, pushing food around my tray, my mind somewhere else. I wanted someone to notice me, to really see me. When my mother met him, I watched her come alive in a way I had never seen before. She smiled more. She laughed. She started coming home with a new energy, her face brighter, her voice lighter. And I wanted to be happy for her, I did. But there was something else too. A feeling I didn't want to name. He moved in quickly. Too quickly. Suddenly, there was a new presence in the house. A deep voice filling the once empty spaces. A new energy shifting the air. He was warm, easy to talk to, the kind of person who could make you feel like you were the only one in the room. And he noticed me. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I mattered. Like I wasn't just a shadow in my own home. I clung to that feeling without realizing how dangerous it was. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, quiet, slipping into my life like a shadow stretching across the floor at sunset there, but unnoticed until it had swallowed everything. First, it was just kindness. The way he asked about my day when my mother was too tired to care. The way he laughed at my jokes when no one else seemed to hear them. He made me feel seen in a way I never had before. I started lingering in the kitchen when he was cooking, sitting on the counter as he told me stories from when he was younger. He listened to me in a way that made me feel important, made me feel like my words mattered. Then came the touches. Small, innocent things, at least that's what I told myself. A hand on my back as he squeezed past me in the hallway. His fingers brushed mine when he handed me a glass of water. A touch that lasted just a second too long when he fixed a strand of my hair. I told myself it was nothing. That I was imagining things. That I was reading too much into something harmless. But my body knew before my mind did. I felt the weight of his glances. The way his eyes lingered just a little too long. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks when he stood too close, when his breath touched my skin. It was intoxicating, the attention. I told myself it was just that, just attention. Just someone finally looking at me the way I had always wanted to be looked at. But there was something else, something that made my stomach twist, something I couldn't name. I started craving it. The glances, the touches, the way he made me feel like I was special. I would find excuses to be near him, to brush against him, to test the boundaries we both pretended didn't exist. And he never pulled away. He let it happen, fed into it with words that could be taken two ways, with touches that could be excused as accidents. There was a night I still can't forget. My mother had gone to bed early, exhausted from work. It was just the two of us in the living room, the glow of the television flickering against the walls. I was curled up on the couch, my legs tucked under me, and he sat closer than he needed to. I could feel the heat of his body, the slow rise and fall of his breath. And then it happened. His hand on my knee. Light at first, barely there. My heart pounded so hard I thought he might hear it. I should have moved. I should have said something. But I didn't. I just sat there, frozen in place, 1,000 thoughts running through my mind. Did this mean what I thought it did? Was this wrong? Or was this what I had been waiting for all along? He didn't say anything. He just let his hand rest there, his thumb barely moving, tracing slow, small circles against my skin. It was the smallest movement, but it felt like the loudest thing in the world. And in that moment, I knew everything had changed. It happened on a night that felt like any other. My mother had gone to bed early again, leaving the house in that familiar, heavy quiet. I was in my room, staring at my phone, not really seeing the screen. I heard the soft knock before the door eased open, and then he was there, standing in the dim light from the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. He had never come into my room before, not like this. He hesitated in the doorway, like he was giving me a chance to tell him to leave. But I didn't say anything. Couldn't. My body was rigid, but my heart pounded in a way that made my thoughts blur together, tangled between fear and something else I didn't want to name. I should have told him to go. I should have asked why he was there. But all I could do was watch as he stepped inside, as he closed the door behind him. He sat on the edge of my bed, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. He looked at me in a way that sent a shiver down my spine, a look that made my stomach twist with something I didn't understand. His voice was soft when he spoke, saying my name like it was something delicate, something worth holding on to. I had spent so long wanting to be noticed, to be wanted. And now that I felt like I couldn't breathe. Every part of me screamed that this was wrong, that this wasn't how it was supposed to be. But there was another part, a smaller voice buried deep inside, whispering that maybe this was what I had been waiting for. Maybe this was proof that I mattered, that I was special, that I wasn't invisible. When he reached for me, I didn't pull away. I told myself it was because I was frozen, because I didn't know what to do. But the truth was, some part of me wanted it, needed it. That thought made my stomach churn, made my throat tighten with something dangerously close to shame. His hand was warm against my skin, his touch slow, careful, as if he was waiting for me to stop him. But I didn't. I let it happen. I let him blur the lines we had been pretending weren't there. This isn't wrong, I told myself. If it was, it wouldn't feel like this. It wouldn't make my heart race. It wouldn't make me feel alive in a way I never had before. But another voice, sharp and cold, cut through the haze. This is wrong. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the weight of what was happening, the crushing realization that once this line was crossed, there was no going back. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating, pressing down on me as my own thoughts twisted into something dark and tangled. If I stopped him now, would he be angry? Would he turn distant, take back the warmth he had given me? Would I go back to being invisible? If I let this happen, would that mean I wanted it? Would that mean it was my fault? I wanted to move. I wanted to say something, anything. But my body refused to listen, trapped between the weight of my own longing and the crushing guilt that came with it. And then his lips were on mine, his hands in my hair, and the world tilted on its axis. This was the moment. The point where everything shifted, where the life I had before shattered into something unrecognizable. And as I let it happen, as I let myself fall into something I couldn't take back, I told myself a lie I would carry for years. That this was love. That this was what I had been waiting for. That if I just convinced myself enough, the guilt would fade, the shame would disappear. But deep down, even in that moment, I knew the truth. Never would. The end wasn't dramatic. There was no fight, no explosion, no final conversation that made everything clear. It just faded like a bruise slowly disappearing, but still aching when pressed. One day he stopped looking at me the way he used to. He stopped finding reasons to be alone with me, stopped brushing his hand against mine when no one was watching. The attention that had once felt intoxicating was gone, leaving behind an emptiness so vast it felt like I was drowning in it. First, I told myself this was good. That it meant I could move on, that I could pretend none of it had happened. But then the silence set in. The weight of everything I had buried for so long crashed down on me all at once. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spiraling into dark places I couldn't escape from. The memories came in flashes, the way he had touched me, the way he had made me feel wanted, the way I had let it happen. The shame burned through me, relentless and unforgiving. I couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Who would understand? If I said the words out loud, then I would have to face what they meant. That I had let it happen. That I had wanted it, even when I knew it was wrong. That I had spent so long convincing myself it was love, only to realize, too late, that it was never love at all. I started avoiding my mother without even meaning to. Sitting across from her at the dinner table felt unbearable, knowing what I had done, knowing that if she ever found out, it would break her. She still looked at him with so much love in her eyes, so much trust. The same trust one had once had before it twisted into something ugly. Sometimes I would catch myself watching them together, searching for cracks, for signs that she felt what I felt, that she knew deep down that something had happened. But she didn't. Or maybe she just didn't want to see it. I wanted to hate him. I needed to hate him. But the truth was, part of me still longed for the way he had made me feel. And that was the worst part. Because even now, even after it was over, I couldn't separate the pain from the pleasure, the shame from the longing. It made me sick, the way my body still remembered his touch, the way my heart still aches in the quiet moments when I was alone. I stopped sleeping. The nights were the worst, when the world was silent and I had nothing to distract myself from the thoughts circling in my head. I would close my eyes and see his face, hear his voice, feel his hands on my skin. And then, just as quickly, I would see my mother, her tired smile, the way she had trusted both of us, never suspecting that something so terrible was happening right in front of her. The guilt wrapped itself around my throat, choking me, making it hard to breathe. I thought about telling someone, a friend, a teacher, anyone who could make sense of the mess inside me. But every time I opened my mouth, the words caught in my throat. Because if I told someone, what would they say? Would they call me a victim? Would they call me a liar? Or worse, would they look at me the way I looked at myself? With disgust, with pity, with the knowledge that I had let this happen and had done nothing to stop it. I wanted to rewind time. To go back to before, to that quiet house where I felt invisible, where loneliness was heavy but safe. Because now, I wasn't just lonely, I was broken. And no matter how much I tried to move forward, to forget, to pretend I could be normal again, the truth was always there, lurking beneath the surface. I had lost something I would never get back. And I wasn't sure I would ever forgive myself for it. Some days I think I understand what happened. I tell myself the words I've read in books, in articles, in the quiet corners of the internet where people whisper their own secrets, hoping someone will hear them. That I was manipulated. That I was too young to understand. That it was never my fault. Other days, those words feel hollow, like they belong to someone else. Like they're meant for a different kind of victim, someone who fought back, someone who tried to stop it. I didn't. I let it happen. And that's the part one can't let go of. No matter how many times I replay it in my head, no matter how many ways I try to rewrite it, the truth doesn't change. I was there. I let the lines blur. I wanted the attention. And yet, I also know that what I wanted and what happened are not the same thing. That craving love is not the same as consenting to what he did. That feeling special for the first time in my life should not have been something he took advantage of. I wish I could go back, not to change what happened, but to talk to the version of myself who let it happen. I want to sit across from her, take her hands in mine, and tell her that she was searching for something she was never going to find in him. That his love was never real. That she was already enough, already worthy, without needing him to make her feel that way. I wonder if she would believe me. I wonder if I believe it myself. I am still learning how to carry this. Some days it feels lighter, like something I can tuck away in the back of my mind and forget about for a little while. Other days it crushes me, pressing against my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I still flinch when people touch me unexpectedly. I still see his face in places where he isn't. I still wonder if he thinks about me, if he ever feels guilt, if he ever remembers the things he said, the things he did. I wonder if it haunts him the way it haunts me. And then I wonder if I even want it to. I have not told my mother. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe one day, the weight of the secret will become too much, and it will slip from my lips before I can stop it. Maybe I will watch her face crumble as she realizes the truth. Or maybe she will refuse to see it at all, and that will break me even more. I want to heal. I want to wake up one morning and not feel the ache of it, not feel the shame burning under my skin. I don't know if that day will ever come. Maybe healing isn't a destination. Maybe it's just waking up and choosing every single day to keep going. I don't have all the answers. I probably never will. But I know this: what happened to me does not have to define me. It is a part of my story, but it is not the whole story. I am more than what he did to me. I am more than the silence I have carried. I am still here. I am still trying. And for now, maybe that is enough. Somewhere, in another life, there is a version of me who never met him, who never learned the taste of stolen love and quiet shame, and I wonder if she ever dreams of me the way I dream of her.